welcome back to another segment of AWS On Air. We are live here in Washington, D.C. for the AWS 2023 DC Summit. My name is Jeff Marushak. I'm a Senior Solutions Architect with our DoD Air Force team, and I am joined by Puneeth and Vikram, and we're going to talk about setting alarms for your cloud environment. So, Puneeth, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hey, hi everyone. I'm Puneeth. I'm a technical account manager with AWS, and I'm an observability ambassador too.
Cool.
Vikram.
Vikram, we've met before, but reintroduce yourself.
Hey folks, thanks again for having me. My name is Vikram. I'm a container specialist solutions architect. Apart from observability, like my role indicates, I focus on containers as well.
Okay, so when we start talking with potential customers or existing customers, or when we have that Cloud 101 talk, the discussion eventually goes to, let's set up some alarms and let's make sure that our cloud infrastructure is running. Let's be aware if something needs to change. We talk about elasticity, and we know how alarms can kind of play a role in helping your elasticity with auto-scaling. But let me know kind of what are your thoughts on alarms, or what are we going to talk about today?
No, alarms is really important, right? Like, I mean, you have your applications running on your cloud environment, and it becomes really important to monitor these applications, not just for performance, but also for, if there is some situation where your application is like getting latency issues or load increases, there should be alarms that should be created to send actionable notifications to your operations team so that they can get on top of the issue and drive it towards resolution. So alarms, very important.
Yeah, a lot of times the example that I will usually talk about is for an auto-scaling group, you would set maybe a Cloudwatch threshold of you want the average CPU utilization of everyone, all the EC2 instances in that auto-scaling group to be, say, below 65%. And you would set an alarm for if that average goes above 65% for a certain amount of time, let's kick off adding another member to that auto-scaling group. Can you give us some more examples of important alarms that we've seen customers utilize?
So you actually bring up a very good point, because many times when we scale, we kind of depend on one metric, which is not always the case, because you need like multiple, in a real world scenario, you have multiple metrics that you're looking at and creating alarms. So that's what I think is our core topic today, that's composite alarms.
Yeah.
So essentially, we want to show customers how they can leverage multiple metrics which are at a high level conveying a similar, or a high level conveying like a similar signal, so that they can like use this composite alarms to kind of like fine tune their monitoring game, as well as like reduce noise, right? I think that's one big issue that customers complain, saying, I have like 100 metrics, and I have like, do I have to create 100 alarms, which is going to like bombard my operations team? And so we are solving that using composite alarms. So that's what we're going to talk about.
To add a quick note to what Puneeth just said, alarms are great, but you don't have to always rely on the metrics that's available out of the box. Like CPU memory is what we always think about.
Yep.
But there is something called a key performance indicator. Like each application has unique metrics based on which you would want to scale the applications, or get notified if things go sideways. So we're going to talk about custom metrics, and we're going to show how Cloudwatch makes it easy to consume these custom metrics, build alarms on top of custom metrics, and how you can further extend this by sending notifications using SNS or any other third-party providers.
Yeah, just for an example, I do a lot of IoT work, and in the industry IoT area, there is the OEE metric, which is calculated based on like a machine's uptime, and you calculate uptime divided by downtime, divided by, or you calculate the number of widgets produced, and you have this overall calculated KPI, but that machine isn't giving us that KPI right off of the machine itself. We have to calculate it and an alarm on that. So that totally makes sense to me. So yeah, do you have a demo we can see some of this in action?
Oh, sure.
Absolutely. So for this demo, we have an Amazon EKS cluster where our application is going to run. And the application I have is a front-end, back-end application. So basically, we're going to see the connections. We're going to measure the connections made to the front end, and also going to measure the latency. For instance, how much time is the front end taking to call the back end and getting the response back from the back end, right?
And really quick, let me just say, Vikram mentioned this is an EKS cluster, so Elastic Kubernetes Service, and you saw he just did a kube control to show all the pods in the Holly
namespace.
Yeah, Holly namespace, and we see the 4 pods there. So, sorry, I just wanted to set the stage.
Perfect. And the way we're going to collect these metrics, remember I was talking about custom metrics, so we're going to capture the custom metrics and store it on, publish it on the Cloudwatch. So the way we're going to do it is using the AWS distro for OpenTelemetry. Basically, it's an agent that you can run, synonymous to Prometheus, right? Like you can run this agent on your Amazon EKS cluster to scrape these metrics, and the agent is configured in a way to publish these metrics to Cloudwatch. So we've already started collecting the metrics, and let me give it some traffic and head on to the Cloudwatch console.
So it looks like you're just running a script to generate some traffic.
Some load.
Yep, okay.
Exactly. And since these are custom metrics, the metrics will be available on a custom namespace, which is where we can go consume these metrics. So in our case, it's the AWS Observability Custom Prometheus metrics. So if we go inside that, as you can see, we are capturing 2 custom metrics. One we call the holy total. The holy total is nothing but the number of connections the application is taking right now.
Okay.
And the downstream duration seconds, it's the latency that I was talking about, like what time the front end takes to make connections to the back end. And things like that. So this is great. We have the metrics, but we'll have to go create the alarms out of this metrics. So what we can do is, like from the Cloudwatch console, it becomes really easy to build these alarms. All you have to do is just click these metrics, then go to the graph metrics, and you have a number of conditions based on which you can create the alarms. For instance, if you would like to know the sum of connections, like let's say at a given minute or a given 30 seconds, if the connection exceeds like 500, then you would want to trigger an alarm, right?
Sure. Yep.
So as you can see, there are multiple operators that you can play with.
Maximum, minimum, average, yeah.
Exactly. And then you have the time duration, like the duration at which you would want the alarm to be considered as a genuine alarm, and then send notifications, right? And then you simply click this alarm button, and that takes you to the alarm page itself. Like you can evaluate that against a particular number, greater than, greater or equal to. There are a lot of operators that you get to play with. And as you can see here, we are already starting to see the connections popping up in the custom metrics tab here. Okay. So I've already created an alarm for the front-end connections, which is this one. And we can see we are in an alarm state because we exceeded the number of connections that we specified.
Looks like you specified 5 or 5.5.
The conditions right here, the average, I was calculating it for a period of 30 seconds. And then if the connections exceed 5, then I would want notifications to be sent. So in this case, I'm integrating that with an SNS receiver. So you get notifications sent to this SNS topic. And whoever is subscribed to this SNS topic can in turn get the notifications. And to go further,
So actually, really quick, you talked about who subscribed to that topic. That could be a person, or that could be a Lambda function, or another piece of AWS that could be subscribed, see that notification, and take action if needed.
Or even a third-party provider, like a Slack or a PagerDuty, and you get paged, right? And we can also show composite alarms.
Yep, I'll quickly take over and show how you can convert these alarms into a composite alarm. So you have obviously you see on my console, you could be having like thousands or hundreds of alarms on your console here. So you can select the alarms that you think are conveying the same signal, a same high-level signal. For example, I have total connections greater than 1,000, and then I also have, let's say, the alarm that Vikram just created.
Sure. And
you see this option to create a composite alarm, which pops up a rule expression here. So the interesting part about this is that you can have 3 Boolean operators.
Yeah.
One is...
Because initially I was thinking it was like and, but we're going to go beyond that. It could be either or, and I could see how different operations teams would have really odd compositions of an alarm. So this is cool.
Actually, it's or and not. Okay. And the good thing is these are just not like your regular metric alarms. You can also use composite alarms within a composite alarm.
Gotcha.
So it kind of creates like an hierarchy So it makes this overall alarm alert processing very, very kind of like very powerful to say. So we'll just take a quick example here. So I picked 2 metric alarms, and then you can actually have up to like 100 child. So they call this, I mean, we call this like child alarms.
Okay.
So this is the parent that we're creating, which is the composite. So you can have up to like 100 childs in here. And just click next, and it's exactly like any other alarm that you create. And then, for example, I just picked like one of the, I picked like SNS, but you can also do the other actions that you can with the regular alarm. So I pick this, and then click next, and go ahead, give it a name. So this is Composite. I'll just say.
Yeah, so now you're creating this composite alarm that's going to trigger when either of those child alarms, and I saw it was or.
Or,
Yeah,
right.
so either one of those, it's going to trigger this composite alarm.
Yeah.
Exactly. But I just want to add to that. So the point is that we also, it's just not R, but then for the instance that the scenario that we had in mind is that we have observed that the application, right, it basically, when the connection count exceeds 1,000 per minute, and the latency actually jumps.
And goes above 5.
Goes
Yeah.
above like 1 second.
Okay.
So that's what we observe. So there could be use cases like this where the customer could individually monitor both of them, but then when a certain instance like this happens, they know that this is because of connection count.
And I could see where some operations teams are split up, and maybe one group of people are monitoring one alarm and another group is monitoring another, but sometimes they're related, and so I could see where a composite alarm could help bridge that gap a little bit.
And also, not always an application it should be relying on a single metric. There are applications which can have multiple KPIs, and based on these values, you would want to take necessary action. So it kind of makes sense to have composite alarms, like, okay, my CPU is high and the latency is also high, so there's definitely something happening. Or you could combine this with multiple conditions.
Yeah. Well, earlier on, I started off by talking about auto-scaling and just said CPU, and then you were saying, oh, well, there could be other things that would cause you to go, like maybe front end to back end latency, or just network in and out traffic. So yeah, I could see where we can gather alarms.
Just one more point, like CPU, you said CPU, right?
Yeah,
So you could also say CPU and burst credits. So my burst credits are like running out, and my CPU is going high. So I know I can make this relation using Composite.
Yeah, that's great. So I was curious, what have you heard of some really cool examples of customers using this? Or, I mean, we just created an example.
Right.
What's like, I see this kind of like your imagination being the limitation here. So like, have you seen some really cool composite alarms?
Like we have seen this for auto scaling. Like many, we did this in a very complex way before, where we had lambdas and stuff to like kind of monitor multiple metrics and trigger an auto scaling action. So what customers are doing is they're leveraging this composite alarm so that they can combine like memory, CPU, and like maybe network or whatever their metric is, or push custom metrics from their application and leverage those to kind of create more efficient scaling mechanisms.
Yeah.
So that's like one very good use case of this.
And another example is like your maintenance activity. Let's say you have hundreds of resources running on your AWS account, and let's say you do some patching. It's going to create a lot of alarms. Like if it's 200 instances, it means 200 alarms, and you're increasing the the noise.
Yeah, so maybe it would be like, if not in a maintenance window, and this, then page people or something like that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's one thing.
I don't have a timeline here, but like if you look at the console, so there is a timeline where you can select a specific time, and then it shows you what the state of this composite alarm was, and it also shows you like which of this child alarm essentially caused this to happen. So if it was an AND, it would be all.
Yep.
But then if it was an OR, in that cases you can say, hey, this was the one that triggered this alarm.
Yeah, and to your point earlier, you can have up to 100 child alarms. This will help you figure out exactly why.
Why? Yeah.
So awesome. We're getting close to end of time. Anything else you want to mention before we wrap up? How people can get started? what would you suggest if someone comes, hey, I need some help with creating some alarms?
The best place is one observability workshop. So you have both cloud native monitoring, Cloudwatch modules, as well as open source monitoring. So it's one single central place where you can find all these modules and get yourself familiar with these topics. For instance, we have a separate module for cloud composite alarms. All you have to do is just follow the instructions, and
that's wonderful.
You can start playing with Cloudwatch.
Awesome. Well, Vikram, Praneeth, thank you very much for joining us today. And I never heard of composite alarms, so I learned a little bit from what you had to say. So everyone, thank you very much for tuning into this segment of AWS On Air. I'm Jeff Marushak. We'll be back very soon with the next segment, live from Washington, D.C.